Hey guys, Trey Bender here, and today I'm sitting here with a fellow troubled teen industry survivor, Mr. Ryan Nickerson.
How's it going?
And Ryan here went to two WASP schools, Carolina Springs Academy and Tranquility Bay. So Ryan, why don't you tell us about what exactly Carolina Springs and Tranquility Bay are?
Well, Carolina Springs was a program just outside of Anderson, South Carolina. And, from my time there, I was only there a short amount of time. I spent about 2 months in Carolina Springs.
Okay.
And then almost 2.5 years in Tranquility Bay. So for me personally, I have more of a TB story than I do a Carolina Springs story.
Well, Ryan, we are definitely going to get to that, but we are going to start with the Carolina Springs story.
Definitely.
So why don't you tell us how it happened? Why don't you start from the beginning?
All right. Well, in April of '99, I lost my dad.
Okay.
My dad died, and I was actually in another program called Inner Harbor at the time.
All right.
Here in Georgia. And my dad died while I was in the program, and I ended up living with my mom and my stepdad.
Okay.
Numerous years of problems between us. Parents, we fought. I mean, I had just lost my dad, and the Columbine shooting had just happened 6 days after my dad died. So
I do remember that.
My parents were on edge. In December of '99, I had moved out. I was living with a friend. My mom called me one night and was like, "Hey, your stepdad's out of town. Why don't you come home?" And it was right after Christmas, and I was like, "All right, I'll come home." She's like, "Your birthday's coming up." So I came home, and I'll never forget, we had pizza. We had pineapple and ham pizza, which is my favorite. Went to bed like everything was normal. We watched a movie, and 2 o'clock in the morning, two people dressed in black woke me up.
Wow.
Threw me on my face, slapped handcuffs on me. Had no idea where I was going. My mom was standing there. My mom just said bye. And next thing I knew, it was, I think it was about 10 o'clock in the morning when we arrived at Carolina Springs.
Wow.
I remember pulling into that dirt road.
I remember that dirt road too.
I was there when Dale Earnhardt Jr. died.
Wow.
Or Dale Earnhardt Sr., excuse me, when he died. That was my time in Carolina Springs. Had a counselor, Sean, who was convinced that I could speak in tongues.
Particular guy you're talking about, and I remember him very well. He was convinced you could speak in tongues.
Yeah.
What difference does that make?
I don't know. It was just one of those things where that was supposed to be my calling while I was at CSA.
Really?
I was still honestly, I was still just very depressed from losing my father and the unknown. My stepdad and I did not get along. We were not friends by any means. And so when I got sent to CSA, I did everything I could to buck the program. I went through a discovery at CSA, and I went through a focus at CSA.
Really?
I do remember that. I remember I did Instincts, Bye 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 in my focus. Did a little dance and everything.
Yeah, I do recall that. When you were at CSA and you'd first gotten there, what was running through your mind?
Honestly, it was more of just trying to get my bearings and figure out what was going on. It was not my first program. It was at the time, it was my 5th or 6th.
Wow.
So it was not the first time I'd been sent away. I knew that it was another industry, so to speak.
Okay.
But it was, I think reality set in when I started talking to other people.
Okay.
And other people told me, oh, I've been here 2 years. I've been here 3 years.
A similar thing happened to me when I first got there too. I remember some guy came up to me, he said, "I've been here for a year." I was like, "What?"
What?
Yeah. So that same thing happened to you.
Yeah.
So when you were told, "Hey, I've been here 2 years, I've been here 3 years," what's running through your mind then?
I'm not gonna be here.
You're not gonna. Yeah.
I'm not gonna be here. I had one particular staff who constantly rode me.
Okay.
And in a lot of ways, I feel like he went out of his way to ride me and make me conform, which I'm not that person, and
No.
I probably never will be. And when him and I ended up actually getting into a fight in the courtyard, and we actually threw swings at each other. And when that went down, I about 3 days later woke up. I had a good buddy, JR, and to use some initials, and he said bye to me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was taken to the airport, and Jamaica was my home.
Oh, wow. So you were only at Carolina Springs for a short time.
Short time, like 2 months.
Just 2 months,
Yeah.
huh? And in those 2 months, what are some of the things that stand out in your mind?
I think what stands out to me was, and I think it's true with any program I've ever been in, is the look of defeat.
Yes, I do.
That you see on people's faces. Even the ones who were getting ready to go home, the unsureness and the what am I going to do with my life? Because you can only put a facade on for so long, how much you're confident and ready to go.
Yes.
But when you get programized, you were not ready to go, no matter how much you believe you are.
No, not at all. Would you say that you felt programized at this time, or were you still in defiance?
No, I was totally in defiance.
Totally in defiance.
Totally in defiance.
So, speaking of this incident you had with this particular staff that was riding you, what were some of the things that led up to this altercation, that led to this? What happened?
My very first day in the program, him and I got into an argument, and he chokeslammed me.
Okay.
And I kind of made it my mission at that point in time that was not going to happen again.
Okay. I know, and I have a good feeling of who it is you're talking about, because I had some dealings with this gentleman too. So, I get it. And, I feel the same way. Did he ever use any kind of other physical?
Knee in the back.
Knee in the back?
Knee in my neck.
Knee in your neck, huh?
Yeah. Shoulder blades.
Tell me something, man. When he was doing the knee in the back to you, can you kind of describe that?
Yeah, it's like I said, I've been in programs, I've been restrained. I've probably been restrained 200 times in my life.
Wow. So when this happened,
there is a feeling though when you are utterly helpless.
Yes.
As a child,
very much so.
Being held down by a grown man or woman, knowing that you're totally defeated and you're at their will, that never goes away.
Ryan, I'm going to agree with you on that wholeheartedly. I had that same thing happen to me, and I relate to that 100%. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, sitting here with you telling me that happened to you, it happened to me, I do relate. I get that.
Yeah.
So he had restrained you this many times, and then you guys were out in the courtyard together.
Yeah, we were.
Take us. Tell us what happened. What happened?
Well, the previous night before I got in trouble, I snuck down into the kitchen and I was hungry. And I got in trouble on the way back up, and him and I got into it, and we were in the courtyard, and he, in front of everybody, demeaned me in a way. It's basically comments about the fact that my parents didn't want me back, and even if I did all the things that I was supposed to do, I was probably never going to amount to anything.
Yeah.
And I had enough at that point. You can only talk bad to somebody so long before they react.
Very much so.
And I turned around and I hit him with everything I had.
After you hit this guy, what happened next?
I was immediately taken by staff,
Okay.
and I was taken upstairs. I was put in OP, and they told me, you sealed your fate. You're going to Jamaica.
Okay.
And I knew I sealed my fate at that moment, but I didn't care.
And when you say you didn't care, would you say you didn't care because you were finally at a point where it really didn't matter, or had they broken you? How would you say?
I don't think it mattered to me that I was leaving or like they had broken me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just I was done. I was not gonna get anything out of CSA.
I completely relate to that, like, wholeheartedly. I understand completely what it is that you are saying when you say you were not going to get anything out of CSA. I had that same feeling when, after about the first few weeks, I was there myself. Okay, so after this, you were sent to Jamaica. Tell us how that went down.
2 o'clock in the morning, and I can only describe this person. Very large, heavy-set, white-haired man came into my room. I said my goodbye to my buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually the nicest staff member I think I ever encountered.
Really?
He didn't handcuff me or anything. He just said, "You're coming with me, and you know where you're going." And I said, "Okay." And I mean, because at that point there was no going home. There was no running from the program or running from the things that I had made my reality, so to speak, at that point. I was going. And we went to the airport. He stood in that line with me. And this is all pre 9/11, so you could go all the way up to the gate back then.
Mm-hmm.
He stood in that line with me till I got on that airplane. And on that airplane, for 4 hours, I was free.
Yeah. I understand that.
4 hours, I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that flight. I talked to people. I had a good time. I told them I was going to a program in Jamaica. I had no idea what I was going to.
So, before you got to Jamaica, you pretty much knew it was going to be a bad place.
I had heard the horror stories that Jamaica was where they sent all the troublemakers, all the kids from the place in Utah or the place in New York or wherever. This is where you went.
I had that same thing happen to me because I was threatened with Jamaica a lot while I was in the program. So yeah, I get that wholeheartedly. All right, so when you got to Jamaica, what was the first thing they did?
So my first trip to Jamaica in my entire life, I get off the plane in Montego Bay, and I had to be with the airline attendants until they got me out.
Mm-hmm.
And in Montego Bay, you actually walk down the steps of the plane. You don't pull up to a gate.
Mm-hmm.
So we walk down the steps, and then we walk into Montego Bay, and there's staff right there. And that was the first time I ever saw the light blue shirts and the dark blue pants. And they are sitting there, and they're like, "Nickerson," and I'm like, "Yep." And they're like, "You're coming with us." And so literally I get thrown into this little van, and we start driving through the Jamaican countryside. I didn't realize how far it was from Montego Bay. I think we drove 2.5 hours.
Wow.
To the south end of the island, and I'd never experienced driving like that in my life. I thought we were going to die.
Really?
Oh my God, they're the worst drivers ever.
What did you think when you saw Jamaica like that?
Well, I mean, Jamaica is like that country that you hear about where you go and you smoke pot with your friends and all this stuff. It was nothing like that for me.
Nothing like that.
We drove 2 hours nonstop. We pulled up to the facility. I'll never forget seeing the gate. I'll never forget seeing the white walls. I'll never forget seeing the courtyard and the facility itself.
Okay.
And when that gate shut, there was no getting out. You were behind 10 feet of wall.
Wow. So after you got there, what happened next? Once you were behind the wall and all of that?
I was immediately taken into the front receiving area where I was greeted by some rather large staff.
Okay.
And I was taken into the showers for delicing. It was about the most unsanitary, inhumane way to intake a child, I guess you could say.
Was lice a problem there?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I don't know anybody who ever had lice.
Me neither.
But you know, we were stripped down naked and we were thrown into their shower area, and then we had baby powder thrown all over us, and we were stared at, we were gawked at, we were called names. It's the first time I got called, "Hey, white boy," and you know, forever. And then hell started.
Really? So Tranquility Bay in Jamaica was hell for you?
It certainly wasn't a walk in the park.
Okay. When you got there, did you experience any of the same things that happened to you at Carolina Springs?
Multiplied.
Like
times 1,000.
So you were restrained?
I had, in my first 3 months, I had my right ankle shattered and my left ankle broken in a restraint.
Really? How common was restraint in at Tranquility Bay?
In Tranquility Bay, if you looked at somebody the wrong way, you went to OP.
Really?
In Tranquility Bay, if you open your mouth, you went to OP.
Really?
Yeah, there was no playing around. It was Category 1, Category 3, it didn't matter.
If there was no playing around, how would somebody advance in the level system there?
It was Tranquility Bay. As somebody who was in the military at one time, it was literally all about breaking you down to build you back up. They made you conform to their will.
And did they use physical violence such as restraint in order to break you?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And this was commonplace every day?
Oh, yeah.
Every day. Can you explain some of the restraints that were used at Tranquility Bay?
I was put in a chokehold one time.
Okay.
Many times the cross ankle, knee in the back, somebody else holding your feet, grinding them into the ground. And in TB, they had mats that they would lay you on these like tile floors.
Mm-hmm.
But those mats might have been 10, 15 years old and had absolutely no cushion in them. So you were on the floor. I got restrained multiple times just on the floor.
Really?
There was no mat, no nothing. I had my face cut up a few times from restraints. Had my pinky and 2 of my index fingers broken in a restraint.
I think I can kind of see it.
Yeah, you can definitely see it.
Yeah, you can definitely see that.
Yeah.
And this kind of thing was just normal there?
If you did not conform, yes, it was very normal.
Mm-hmm. Did you try to tell your parents about what was going on?
I wrote my parents, and of course the way it went down was he's manipulating you. I mean, that's what the parents were taught, was anything you said or did, you were manipulating. You were just trying to come home. You were trying to get out of the situation. You didn't want to work your program. You didn't want to work to become a better person. So anything that happened, all the parents knew was you're manipulating.
You know, I feel like, the whole telling the parents that the kids were manipulating was just commonplace, and everybody was told that. During your time at TB, how far in the level system did you progress?
We had 6 levels. I made it to level 5 once.
You made it to level 5 once?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to level 5?
22 months.
22 months?
22 months.
It took you 22 months to get to level 5?
Yep.
Dare I ask how long it took you to make level 3?
I made level 3 after about 18 months. I fought for the first 6 months.
So you fought them.
Oh, yeah.
And how did that go?
I was in OP every day.
Every day.
I spent a good 5 months in OP.
Okay. While you were at Tranquility Bay, and as somebody who did make it to the upper levels the way you did, you were technically a junior staff there, or what did they call it?
At the time, they had transitioned. When I first got there, it was just you were an upper level, and then they started the junior staff program where we actually wore the blues, and we would walk around with radios. And you had to be level 5 or 6. Level 4, you were still an upper level, and then level 5, you became junior staff.
Okay.
And yeah, so for 2 weeks, I was a quote-unquote junior staff.
How did it make you feel making junior staff?
I'm sure there are people out there who absolutely got a thrill out of it. I didn't want any part of it.
Wow. So Ryan, there's a particular incident that is well known at Tranquility Bay that I'd now like to ask you about. Is it okay if I ask you about that?
Yeah.
You, I think you know what incident I'm about to ask.
I do, and we will we'll dive in together, sir.
Okay. It's a well-known fact that in those early years at Tranquility Bay, there was in fact a legitimate suicide. That did happen, and it was a young woman.
Yeah.
You knew this young woman.
Yeah, she had only been there a few days, and I didn't know her personally. I'd seen her in passing. We'd said hi. I never got to know her on a one-on-one basis, which the boys and the girls really never got to know each other unless you were an upper level or in one of your seminars.
So you didn't, you had seen her around.
Oh, yeah.
And she was one of those people, you knew who she was.
Yeah.
She probably knew who you were.
Yep.
But you guys had never spoken.
I think once in passing.
Once in passing.
Yeah.
All right, so in your own words, tell us how that went down.
Well, that day was like any other day. We had done our morning stuff. We had taken our showers in our cold stalls outside in the middle of our scenic view by the ocean.
Yeah, if you want to call it that.
You know, been gawked at by everybody while we were doing it. And we had gone to school that day, and then we'd left school and we were heading out. We were either leaving the basketball court or heading out by it, but it was mid-afternoon, probably about 3 o'clock. So I think we were leaving the basketball court and the rec area at the time, and we were walking. There was the basketball court, tennis courts, and then there was a main courtyard drive around, and it was also where the girls' facility was. It kind of went in a horseshoe like this, and then the school was on the upper level, and it was actually built on top of the ceiling of the facility, or the roof of the facility. And so that's where the girls did their school, and we were leaving, and when we were leaving, there was just the most god awful scream that you could ever. I can't put into words to describe the way it sounded, but it's something that has never left.
So you remember the day this happened?
Yeah, you take 100 13 to 17-year-old girls,
wow,
and have them all at one time see the most tragic event they may ever see, and the gasp, the scream that collectively came out from everyone at once was enough to shudder bones. And I remember I looked up hearing the scream, and I just watched her fall.
So you watched this.
Yeah, I
happen.
was probably 25 yards away.
Wow. Would you say that this was a moment that's just stood out in your mind from your time in Tranquility Bay?
One of many.
One of many, but definitely one of the higher ups.
Yeah, it. You know, I watched the director and the director's wife come out, and I watched them wrap her, and I watched them basically take their time as she was already dead.
Wow.
And load her into the back of that little dark gray car and drive away. And then I watched him yell at us and tell us that if we ever said anything about it, we would be dropped and put in OP and never come out.
So this person who was the director,
Yeah,
he just was basically brushing this off.
yeah, it was. I mean, it was pretty well known in the facility, at least on the men's side. I don't have firsthand knowledge, obviously, on the girls' side, but on the men's side, it was something you did not talk about. If you opened your mouth about it, you would never see the light of day again.
Wow. Were there other things that you didn't talk about?
Oh yeah, there was multiple times. There were staff members who liked to, there were staff members who like touch girls and boys.
I feel like that's very common. And back in this time, would you say that it was just easier to get away with, or was it easier to get away with because it was in Jamaica?
Well, I don't know if it was just because it was Jamaica. Unfortunately, I hate to say this like this, but you have a facility like this, and there's always going to be people there who are in it for the wrong intentions.
Very
and
much.
unfortunately, those are the people that will stick out more than the people who were actually trying to help. Because I'm never going to say that there weren't good people at some of these facilities. There were. But there were terrible people who made a lot of kids' lives hell.
You know, I am definitely going to agree with that because I've had that same thing happen to me. I saw the same thing, and I will 100% agree with you on that. But I want to touch back down. So, you saw this happen, and it was never talked about, and other things were just never talked about. What level were you on at this time?
When that incident happened, I couldn't have been more than 2 or 3.
Okay.
I wasn't an upper level. I think I may have been a 3 because I think I had a buddy at the time.
Okay. Wow, you know, just hearing that story is because I'd heard about it, you know, but I never really knew the whole story. But I did want to touch on that while we were here. All right. So after that happened, explain to us, you weren't allowed to talk about it. How long had you been at Tranquility Bay?
When that happened, you know, I'm not entirely sure. I think I've been there about a year and a half when it happened.
Okay.
But it wasn't toward the end of my time in TB. So I want to say it was, yeah, because I was there. Maybe it was less because I saw them build the new school after it happened, and that took them almost a year to build it. So I want to say maybe like 6 to 8 months, something like that, when it happened.
You know, it's very sad that something like that could happen and just be brushed under the rug by the director there. And did you try to tell your parents about this incident?
Oh yeah, I told my parents about that, and I remember I got a letter back from my mom, and it was saying that basically she was a very troubled young lady, and that all the parents were made aware, and that she was very troubled, and that she couldn't deal with her own issues, so she chose the coward's way out.
Wow. That is, it is crazy. And, yeah. All right, though. You were at TB for a long time, and you said you did make it to level 5. You know, when you got up to these upper levels, what did you think? Like, what happened as soon as you got those upper levels?
Well, so I got upper level in 02. So I I got upper levels after September 11th.
Okay.
And September 11th, we weren't told anything. We actually had kids whose parents worked in the tower.
Mm-hmm.
We were told nothing. We had kids from New York. We were told nothing. Nothing. So we didn't even know about it till 3 days after it happened.
And they didn't think that they should tell you about a historical event of that magnitude.
No, I had no clue. So I got the upper level after that. And I think part of it was after that event, it was like, holy crap, I'm missing out on a lot of stuff. I want to know what's going on. So I worked my program and I got to the upper levels. And then the upper levels, I will actually say there were some kind of cool privileges with the upper levels. We had a bonfire one night.
Okay.
And it was out on the beach, and we were, it was the 20 minutes where we got to kind of be kids. And I said something to a girl for another guy who couldn't be there that night. I didn't say anything inappropriate. I was just like, hey, this person said hi.
Wow.
Boom, dropped. Immediately dropped. So I got dropped all the way down to level 2. And at that point, I was like, you know what? We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So I immediately went back to OP and just dropped myself.
Wow. From level 5.
From level 5, yeah.
That takes a lot of work, too.
I dropped 3 levels in about 5 minutes, and then I dropped the last 2 levels in about 2 seconds.
Wow.
And I spent the rest of my time in TB. I want to say I got dropped in late July, and I spent the rest of my time in OP.
Mm-hmm. There was something anybody could do while they were in these schools called filing a grievance, and you could file a grievance anytime you felt you'd been treated unfairly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'd heard stories about filing a grievance against somebody like a staff member while at TB. What would you say about that whole system?
So I actually have a very particular incident with that.
Okay.
There was a CD, and I'll never forget it. It was an Usher CD.
Okay.
And we had been listening to it, and it ended up missing. And that CD came out of the director's office.
Mm-hmm.
And it got put on me that I had stolen it.
Really?
And I filed a grievance because I had never even been in the office. You weren't allowed in that office.
Mm-hmm.
So I filed a grievance, and I still ended up getting in trouble for it. I still ended up getting dropped for it. Even though I could prove I had never been in the office, it was me who stole it. And then I think it was like 3 months later that it was found out a staff member had taken it.
Really?
But it cost me at the time everything.
Wow.
There was no such thing as grievances against staff. They were ignored or you got in trouble, period.
You know, I'd actually heard that because I've met other people who were at TB like you, and I asked about that same thing, and one of them looked at me and said, yeah, we had that, but you didn't dare.
No, you didn't dare. You didn't dare. Your life would be just upside down.
Okay, so you're confirming this that
Oh, yeah.
you didn't dare file a grievance at TB.
No. There really was no such thing as filing a grievance.
Mm. Is there any other thing that stands out in your mind from your time in Jamaica that you'll never forget? Anything that you haven't told
Other
us?
than Zig Ziglar and Anthony Robbins?
Oh, yeah. I remember those. We'll get to that in a minute.
And Saltfish. Yeah, there's definitely one particular thing that always stands out, and it's some of the friendships, some of the lifelong friendships that I've made with people who have experienced the same thing, and some of us, we can all laugh when we're around normal people,
Yes.
so to speak, because we have this connection that other people will never understand.
I can agree with that. And you and I actually do know some of the same people.
Yeah, we know a lot of the same people.
And, you know, this is actually the first time you and I have ever met.
Yeah.
So, but we've met each other and we've talked over Facebook.
For years.
But this is the first time we've ever physically met.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm glad that we had social media to bring us together. But yeah, we did know some of the same people.
We
In fact, I asked you about one, and you said, "Oh, that guy's coming to my wedding."
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait.
That guy that I brought up, you know, I spent a lot of time with him there too,
Yeah.
so that makes me feel good. Okay, so after you were dropped, you know, you dropped yourself. What happened? Did you start the program back?
No.
Did you go home? Okay, tell us what happened.
I literally fought everyone. I mean, I threw punches. I fought every single person. You have to understand, when I say that there were staff members who like to touch people, 4 weeks into TV was the first time I was ever raped.
Oh my goodness.
And I think it happened 4 or 5 times when I was there.
I am.
So at that time, after 2 years, I was just ready to go.
Did you ever try to tell anybody about?
Oh yeah, I wrote home, manipulation, you're lying.
So nobody believed you
No.
that you had been
Never.
sexually assaulted.
Yeah, never. I've talked to multiple girls who had very similar things and same story.
Was it the same person who was doing this, or was it a multitude of people?
I believe it was a multitude. Same person for me personally, but I believe it was more than one.
So this was widespread and rampant at TB.
I don't know if it was necessarily widespread, but there was definitely a group of people who endured it.
Wow. And do you think that they did this because they knew they could get away with it?
Definitely. I mean, hitting on the grievance thing and the way we got our issues out and stuff. Again, that facility and the program in general was teaching you. We went through discovery and focus and accountability and all this, and you were learning to deal with yourself and become an accountable person. But part of being accountable in that program was accepting responsibility for everything. Even if you weren't wrong, it was still somehow your fault, and you needed to be accountable for it.
I do remember that when I was going to that. So when you were in these seminars in Jamaica like that, did you see the facilitators berate people, especially young girls?
Oh, yes.
And how would they do this?
Oh, yes, multiple times. I watched facilitators tell people that they were fat or that they were ugly or that they weren't maturing enough or that they were never going to become anybody or that their parents didn't love them or that they'd be better off dead.
I can relate to that because I had the same thing happen to me when I was going through this, you know? And I had facilitators tell me that I would never amount to anything and I was stupid. You know, I got that a lot. And I saw a lot of it happen. And would you say that when you got into these seminars, was the bashing more on the young women or the young men? Or was it a mix of both?
I think it was a mix of both, honestly. Facilitators, just from what I saw, there were certain facilitators that you knew before they even got there that it was going to be a shit show.
Of course. Absolutely.
There was one particular very tall man who whenever he came, you knew it was going to be bad. And there was one very particular dark-skinned woman who when she came, it was just going to be a mess. You knew it.
I do.
Yeah, you knew every part of that was going to be upside down.
Wow. I do remember those seminars like that, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Would you say that the majority of the abuse you endured throughout your stay in both of these schools came from the seminars or being in the facility?
No, it was everyday life and being in the facility.
Every day.
For me personally, the seminars were just kind of a laughing thing.
I see.
The seminars for me were a break because there was no hands-on in the seminars.
Okay.
Because that is one thing I will say the facilitators would not allow. They would berate you, they would mentally break you down, but there was no hands-on in these seminars for the most part, unless you were just totally out of control.
I get that. You know, there is something that I want to kind of backtrack on, and I'd like it if you would explain it to us. Tranquility Bay in Jamaica was technically a school, right?
Technically.
Okay. Could you kind of tell us about what it was like going to classes there? Like, can you kind of explain how it worked?
Sure. You went into a room and they gave you a book and you taught yourself. You did every book that you had. You would literally just read the chapter, do the test at the end of the chapter, and then you'd go to the next chapter and do the test, and then go to the next chapter and do the test. I think I completed 10th grade math in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Did I actually learn anything?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so would you say that there was not a lot of traditional teaching going on?
There was no traditional teaching whatsoever. Okay.
So while you were taking these classes at Tranquility Bay, what all would you say you did learn?
History, because I liked it.
So that's really the only thing you got anything out of? Did you learn any math whatsoever?
No, I still couldn't pass a college algebra or 10th grade algebra if I tried.
That makes two of us. I get that. All right. So school at Tranquility Bay was an immense joke. Nothing else.
Yeah, it was.
Now I want to touch on the food. What kinds of things were you fed while you were there? Breakfast, lunch, dinner?
So my personal favorite thing that I had in Jamaica were the beef patties.
Okay.
My wife will tell you now, I still clamor for the beef patties.
Okay.
There was one particular meal that when it would come around, I would not eat it.
What was
ever.
that?
It was the saltfish.
Saltfish. What is that?
Saltfish is a full fish head on, and it is the most god awful salty tasting thing that you have ever eaten in your life. It tastes terrible. And there's just nothing like getting served a fish with the head on.
I've actually seen that a few places, but I've never actually eaten it.
Yeah.
So
in the mornings we had a lot of oatmeal or cornflakes, stuff like that. If I can remember correctly, we have fried plantains every once in a while, but I think that was more of a dinner or lunch thing.
Okay.
Powdered milk. And I think we were all convinced that the powdered milk had something in it that was keeping our sex drives down as kids. pretty convinced that was the rumor, at least.
During meal times there, what were some of the things they would do to you?
Every mealtime we weren't allowed to talk, and it was either Deepak Chopra or Zig Ziglar or Anthony Robbins that played in the background, and it was the constant motivational tapes. Boys ate at one time, girls ate another time. We never intermingled in the cafeteria or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Were you separated by gender at TB?
Oh yes, all the time.
Would you say that as a young person, that separation from the opposite sex, did that affect you at all?
I think it just made it awkward.
I see.
To a degree, I understand why we were separated.
I get that.
Bunch of young kids, hormones, things like that. But when we all transitioned back into the real world, I think it made interactions with the opposite sex intense.
I do agree with that.
Especially for a kid who hasn't been around a female in 3 years, hasn't really had more than a passing conversation with one. you don't know how to act.
No.
You don't know what to say. And it was you're trying to catch up with the rest of society
Yeah.
in a 2 or 3 day period as you're adjusting, rather than the 2 or 3 years you just missed out on. When I went back to school, a month and a half before I turned 18.
Back to regular high school.
Back to regular high school. So I went back as a senior in high school.
Okay.
I left the beginning of my 9th grade year.
Mm-hmm.
So I had missed, 3 years of kids growing up and maturing and playing sports and all this and going to proms and going to socials and whatever you want to call it these days. I don't know what the young kids call it. But
I don't either.
TikToking and everything else. I had missed all this, and so it was like I came back and I still had friends who knew me, but I was a completely different person when I came back. When I came back, I spoke full patois, which is the Jamaican dialect.
Okay.
I spoke very fast. You couldn't understand me. It was unique learning to make friends again.
I see.
And learning to sit in a classroom and talk to the opposite sex and not make an ass out of myself, because I didn't know how to interact and have that conversation. I was never taught that.
Really? I've heard a lot of stories, and I myself, when I came out, I had a hard time adjusting too. Well, you were in the 12th grade though.
Yeah.
And you didn't know anybody.
No, it was, I came home, I moved back in with my parents in November of 2002, and by January 23rd of 2003, my birthday was on the 16th of January, I turned 18. I moved out.
Okay.
And I stayed gone.
You stayed gone? After you got out, what are some other things that you struggled with once you got back into the real world after having been in a program like Tranquility Bay for so long?
Just everything.
Everything.
I mean, it was getting up in the morning and learning a routine, or accepting that I didn't have to do certain things anymore. Learning how to cope with the world. I mean, you were taught all these things to do and how to be accountable for yourself and everything, but you were never taught how to live your life. That's right. And how to accept the world. All these kids were set up with learning to obey their parents and learning to do what they were supposed to do, but none of them, not once, were ever set up to learn how to deal with life when it throws you a curveball.
No.
And so I feel like a lot of us just went back out into the world and had absolutely no idea what we were doing.
I actually can relate to that too. And I agree with that. That same thing happened to me.
Unfortunately, I think there's still a lot of kids who are probably in their 30s now who still have no clue what they're doing.
I agree with that too. I want to touch on something back in Jamaica. Do you have any regrets from your time there? Anything that you regret having to do? Anything you regret doing? Even as a junior staff?
No.
Nothing?
No. I think, I think what I regret the most is maybe not keeping in touch with some of the people I should have kept in touch with, as far as the kids who were there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very select few who I still talk to, but I always wondered what happened to a lot of people. And I wish I would have stayed in touch more. I wish we would have had Facebook and things like that 10, 15 years ago when we could have stayed in touch.
I actually can relate to that too, because, when I got out of there, one thing I remember reconnecting with was MySpace.
Yeah, wow, MySpace.
Yeah. Back then, though, that's just what you used.
Yeah.
You know, not now. Back then. Nowadays, it's like young people don't even know what MySpace even is.
No,
That's totally cool.
it's a whole conversation for another day.
Yes, it is. All right. So once you got out of there and you were talking about struggling with that and you left, how has your time in the program affected your adult life?
Well, it's, for me personally, it's not just Jamaica, or it's not CSA.
Okay.
My first institutionalized setting, I was 8 years old, and I spent 6 months in a mental hospital.
Okay.
My second institutionalized setting, I was 11, and I spent a year in an outdoor therapeutic program in Georgia.
All right.
My third, I went to another hospital. My fourth, I went to another hospital. By the time I was 14, I had already spent about 2.5 years incarcerated.
Wow.
So when I got to Jamaica, I knew this is another facility.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I was 18, it was 6 years of my life that I had spent from the time I was 8 till 18 incarcerated in a facility. Whether it was an RYDC as a young kid who did something incredibly stupid,
Okay.
or it was a hospital or an outdoor program or WASP. And having spent all that time in these facilities, I learned a lot about myself and what I can take as a person. Absolutely. That is one thing I will give WASP and these facilities. I learned that I can be bent to the absolute worst day in my life, but I can never be broken.
That's good. You know?
That is good, because I learned that I can walk through hell.
I agree. Tell us about some of the things that you've overcome.
All right. November 4th, 2005.
Okay.
I've been out of the program only 3 years. I was a kitchen manager for Applebee's.
Okay.
And it was a Thursday. I remember we had closed the restaurant. I had let my dishwasher and my cook go home, and it was me and one other manager in the store. And we were closing. I was closing the kitchen. She was doing the money count, the bar count, and the side doorbell rang. Well, we had just let these guys leave like 10 minutes earlier. So she was like, it's probably Juan or whoever, and I'm going to go let them in. They probably forgot something. So I'm back in the back. I'm lifting this grill grate. Well, grill grates in the restaurants are like 60 pounds. They're not light. So I'm lifting it up. I'm checking under it, and I hear this click. And I'll never forget that. It was just... And I turned to my left, and I looked to my side, and there's a guy who's probably 6'2" or so. He's got a white t-shirt on, black jeans, red bandana over his face, and there's a 9mm Beretta right here, pointing at my head.
Wow.
And he looks at me, and he starts yelling, get on the floor, get on the ground. And I just look at him, and I'm like, well, can I put the grill down first? I mean, I didn't know what to do.
No, I wouldn't have known what to do.
I was a young kid. I had just gotten home from the Army. I really, at the time, it was like, are you serious? Like, this is what I'm going to go through now. And we get drug out into the bar area. Well, when we get drug out into the bar area, there's another guy. He's got my female manager and then the dishwasher and the cook. And he's like, take your clothes off. Take your clothes off. And so we all are having stripped naked. And I mean naked in the middle of this Applebee's. And basic psychology in the event of like robberies and murders, they generally make them strip before they kill them.
Yeah.
So they make a strip. Well, they start tying up the cook and the dishwasher. And while they're doing it, one of them starts messing around with my female manager, talking about how they're going to have fun with her. They're going to make her do things.
Oh, wow.
And I stood up and I hit one of them.
That's good.
I hit him as hard as I could. And I knocked the gun out of his hand. I remember that. And I remember I bent down to pick up the gun. And when I did, I got hit in the back of the head.
Oh, wow.
And when it was over, I had a fractured sternum, 2 broken ribs, broken collarbone, and part of my jaw was cracked.
Oh, shit.
They beat the hell out of me, but they didn't touch her.
Oh.
And about 20 minutes after they got the money, they were still talking about how they were going to kill us. And they asked what time the cleaning crew showed up, because at night you have a cleaning crew come in and clean the restaurant. Mm-hmm. And my boss was smart enough to say they'll be here any minute.
Mm-hmm.
And they left. Well, they drove down the road, and luckily for us, they were speeding, and they got pulled over. And they happened to have all the liquor bottles in the back of the car, and it immediately came back to Applebee's. Well, come to find out that 10 minutes before they robbed us, they robbed the manager at Fuddruckers. They killed him.
Oh, my goodness.
About 2 weeks before they robbed us, they started in New York, and they were driving down to Miami, and they were just robbing different places along the way. They killed a father in a home invasion in front of his 5-year-old daughter. So why they never shot me, I will never be able to tell you.
Jeez, Ryan.
But it was one of those things. And there was always the question of why or whatever. But it hasn't stopped life.
No, it hasn't. So, you feel like you're able to overcome more because of your time?
I do. I think because of what we collectively went through,
mm-hmm.
whether we ever got anything truly significant out of the program or not, I think it all made us understand that we can go through more than the average person.
You know, I'm really glad that you touched on and told me this story, Ryan. I actually can't agree with that. I can. I feel like my time there has caused me to become very protective of other people.
Yeah,
especially younger people or people who really can't defend themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you see that kind of thing. I know when I see that kind of thing, I step in because of my time there. Because I remember seeing a lot of that happen. And I was totally powerless to stop it. But now I see myself as somebody that can step in and stop these kinds of things. Because I see myself.
And I think a lot of it is personal growth. Me personally, I have an aunt who is extremely mentally handicapped.
Mm-hmm.
She's my favorite person in the world, and anybody will tell you that. Like that, if I could aspire to be anyone in life,
mm-hmm.
it is to be as happy as she is all the time. No matter what happens,
okay.
She is happy.
I like hearing things like that. I like hearing good things like that. That is so great, Ryan.
Yeah. So,
Ryan, there is another incident that you have been very open about that I do want to ask about. Okay. Is it okay if I ask you about
it? Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you know what I'm going to ask.
Yeah, I know where you're going.
So, with this particular incident, I'd like for you to just tell it in your own words from the beginning.
Sure.
Could you do that?
Yeah, on July 20th of 2017.
Okay.
At the time I was married, I had just had my second daughter about 34 days earlier, so she was very, very new.
Okay.
I was on my way to work. I worked for a liquor distributor in Atlanta. Took the same route every day. Had to be there about 5 o'clock in the morning, so I was up by 2:30, 3 o'clock, and driving to work.
Okay.
That morning, I got up.
So this was like any
normal day. I drove down the highway. I got off my exit on the highway. I drove down to the next road, which was called Maxim Road, which turned into it would eventually turn into Austell Road and meet at the East-West Connector in Atlanta. But I drove down Maxim, and the way it went was you kind of went down a hill, then you went up a hill, then you went down a hill. Well, there was not a lot of lighting. It was 2 lanes, turning lane, 2 lanes on each side. And I came up over the second hill, and as I was cresting the second hill, I saw what I thought was a deer in the center lane. And I kind of watched it for a second, and then I looked back, and as soon as I looked back, something ran right in front of my truck. And I hit it on the left front steering area of my truck. So right face to face with the driver's side. And it rolled under my left tire, and then it rolled under my back tire. And at the time, I absolutely had no idea what I thought I hit. I thought I hit a baby deer.
Okay.
I thought that what I saw was the deer and then a baby trying to get to its mother. And I drove maybe a quarter mile down the road, because where I hit it, there was no lighting at all. It was pitch black.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, if I stop right here, somebody's going to hit me. So I drove down to the first lit area. I stopped. I called the cops. I called my ex-wife at the time, and my boss, and I was like, I think I hit something. I think it was a deer, but I just need to make sure, The cops came, and they were like, hey, is your truck still drivable? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, we need you to drive it back up there. And I think that's when it hit me, like, if it was deer, they wouldn't make me drive my truck back up here.
Right.
So I drove my truck back, and when I got there, the Georgia State Patrol was already there, Cobb County was there, and Douglas County sheriffs were there, and there was a police chaplain there.
Okay.
And the first thing they told me was, you hit a woman, and she died.
When they told you this, what was running through your mind?
It is the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And I have lost a father. I've lost friends. I've lost a lot of people that I know. I've never felt anything like I felt in that 45 seconds.
Really?
They came to me and they did a blood test, everything that, they have to do. I wasn't drunk. I hadn't been doing drugs or anything like that. It was just an honest, wrong place, wrong time situation. They cleared the accident investigation in 45 minutes, the quickest fatality pedestrian incident that they had ever done. That's how cut and dry it was. But they had told me that I hit a woman.
Okay.
My mom at the time, my boss showed up first when he found out. And then my mom came, and my mom took me home. I went home. I was an emotional wreck. I was crying.
I would have been too.
I could not stop crying. I went to sleep, or I tried to go to sleep, and this was probably 7:30 in the morning when I did this. And then the 12 o'clock local news came on, and at 12 o'clock, maybe it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock when I got there, but at 12 o'clock, it was the first story that came on the air, and they showed the scene of the reporter filming across the street, and I saw me and my truck and talking to the police, and then the picture of the 10-year-old girl came on the news, and that's how I found out that it was not a woman, it was a 10-year-old girl.
Wow. Ryan, I can't imagine what that must have felt like for you. I'm sure it was very emotional, not very easy. Do you feel like you handled this better because of your time?
Oh no, I fell apart.
You fell apart?
Oh yeah, I fell apart. I had to actually go to another facility. I went to a place in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
But I picked this place.
I see.
And I wanted to go there. I needed to, as a father and as a father of 2 girls, I could not look at my own kids and not feel guilty. I'd taken somebody's baby.
Yes.
I had taken a little girl from somebody, and I have a girl who is 9 now. You know, and I went into habits that ultimately killed my father. My dad was an alcoholic, and he drank too much, and he threw up and he choked to death. And I started drinking half a bottle a day after
Wow.
this. And it was my way. It was my way to escape everything I was feeling. But I did come to the conclusion that I needed to get help.
I see.
And I went to a place that actually helped me regain some of what I had lost. I think there definitely will always be a piece of my heart that never heals from something like that.
I can definitely relate to that or understand.
But the best part of it now is I have come so far, and it's been almost 4 years, and I have come so far from when that happened to now. Her mom and I are very good friends.
That's good.
She has never once blamed me, been mad at me, or anything like that. She was the one who actually messaged me and was like, "You gotta stop blaming yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. Go get help. Get back to being a father." And you know, meeting my wife was really my saving grace.
You know, I can definitely see that. You know, I met your wife, and she seems like a pretty amazing person.
She's the light of my world.
I can tell.
She's my
sunshine. I've noticed that. I've noticed that about you, and I really see that. You know, I definitely do see that. Would you say that was just like a defining moment in your life, or what would you say?
I think every moment that has been traumatic has been somewhat defining, because there's been more than I can count. But I think each one has taught me something about myself, and each one has shown me that even when it is the absolute worst possible situation, there is a way to overcome it.
I really like that. I really do. And, you know, I can definitely agree with that. You know, I really can. And, Ryan, I've really seen you overcome a lot.
Yeah,
I've seen you...
in years.
I have. Because, you know, I've seen you. And I do remember when that incident happened. And I remember you posting a video of how you were struggling.
Yeah.
I do recall
multiple
that.
videos.
I recall that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember seeing you in those videos and thinking that was very brave. And in a way, I feel like it kind of inspired me to start making these videos like I'm making.
Yeah,
like the one you and I are making right now.
It's you know, it's different. I did those videos as a man who was so lost, and a man who woke up every day not wanting to wake up. And it's the weirdest thing, and I hate to touch on this subject, but I think at some point a lot of the troubled youth kind of went through this. It's the weirdest thing when you wake up and you want to die, but you're not suicidal because you actually don't want to kill yourself, or you don't have the guts to kill yourself.
Yes.
But you're hoping every day you don't wake up, and that was me every day. I was drinking, trying to find the nerve to be able to get to that point. And I'm very thankful that I never got to that point, because maybe it was one more bottle that would have got me there.
You know, I actually can say I do get what you're saying, where, you know, it's like you want to die, but you can't do it yourself.
Exactly.
You're talking to a guy, you know what, I will say this. I spent years indirectly trying to kill myself by going out and going crazy every night. And I don't know how I was able to do it, but I would go out, go crazy, come home, go to bed, wake up, and go to school or work.
Yeah.
Like nothing even happened.
Every day.
Every day. And you'd see me there. You wouldn't have known that I was going crazy the night before. You would not have known that about me at the time. So, I understand that. But I want to talk to you about the movement in the troubled teen industry that's been coming about as of late.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
It's weird because I like to post stuff, and I've been really, really silent on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been silent because I don't have anything to say. I've been silent because I'm kind of just watching, seeing where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, the events that happened to me almost 20 years ago now are events that happened to me 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff that I will never forget, but it's stuff I don't have to live with anymore.
That is so great.
And of course, I don't ever want to see the next generation of kids go into these programs. I hope they're all shut down.
Me too.
And I hope that the ones that do remain open are actually ones that are truly going to help kids. I hope that when these programs are open, they're not open to deceive and manipulate and to hurt children.
Right.
I hope that they are genuinely open to help people, whether it's children or adults or whoever.
Yes.
And if those ones remain open and they do help people, I think the old saying is, for every 100 people that go into a facility, only 10 of them will actually get help.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. If those 10 people get help, let them get help. But I think what we got to figure out is how to connect with the other 90 without destroying them.
I think that's a great idea, really. What if you could talk directly to younger survivors? What would you say to them?
Don't give up, man.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. And I think more than that, it's I think that word, like, we use it like we're survivors of the troubled teen industry, but we're not. We're not survivors of the troubled teen industry. Because if we were surviving, we would just be here.
I got that.
We're not. We're part of a movement, and we're part of a group of people who has seen the absolute worst in humanity.
We sure have.
And have overcome it.
We have definitely.
Survivors don't just overcome shit.
Mm-hmm.
Survivors are people who just deal with it. We have overcome it. We have built better, and we continue to build better.
We sure have.
So we are bigger than that, and we always will be. The one thing that we have all proven is that little voices, when spoken together, make one loud boom.
They sure do. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on?
I think that we've just about hit the nail on the head there, Trendbender.
I like that. So, Ryan, there's just one last thing that I want to ask you.
Yeah.
If you could talk directly to the directors and owners of these programs and these people who assaulted you and restrained you as an adult, what would you say to them now?
Never thought about that. If I saw any of them now, I think with the person who I am today,
Mm-hmm.
I think I've already accepted the fact that the justice system is probably going to fail us.
I certainly would agree with that.
So you know what? Live your life, because you will have to answer for those regrets.
You sure will. One day.
I don't have to regret what you did, and I'm not going to regret it.
Mm-hmm.
But you, at some point in time, will regret what you did. And that's not for me to speculate on, to live with. I don't have to do it.
I agree.
My life is my own manifest destiny. Nobody else's.
Manifest destiny, that's right.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
I'm good, brother.
Okay. Ryan, thanks so
man.
much for doing this. And hey, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Okay.